My future mother-in-law called my father a janitor in front of 200 people at her charity gala. She said it slowly, leaning into the microphone, making sure every senator, every doctor, and every socialite in that gilded ballroom could hear every syllable. My fiancé laughed. I did not. I smiled, set down my champagne glass, and made a decision that would cost her everything she had spent 30 years building. She had no idea that the woman she had just humiliated in front of Houston's finest had been quietly buying up her debts for the past 4 months. She had no idea that the quiet girl from the wrong side of town was the one holding the knife. And she had absolutely no idea that by this time tomorrow, she would not have a company left to stand on. My name is Serena, and at 31, I had spent the last 3 years playing a role so convincing that even the man I loved believed it. To the Caldwell family, I was the sweet, unpolished girl that their son Marcus had inexplicably fallen for. I was the daughter of a maintenance worker, raised in a 2-bedroom house in Pasadena, a suburb of Houston that the Caldwells would never voluntarily drive through. I wore simple dresses to their dinner parties. I laughed at the right moments and stayed quiet at the wrong ones. I let Diana Caldwell, my future mother-in-law, correct my pronunciation of charcuterie at Thanksgiving without flinching. I let her redirect every conversation about the wedding toward her own preferences, her own florist, her own guest list. I let her believe that I was grateful just to be included. What Diana Caldwell did not know, and what I had never felt the need to announce, was that I was the founder and silent majority owner of Stellar Path Capital, a private equity firm that had quietly acquired and restructured 14 mid-size companies across the Gulf Coast in the past 6 years. I had built it from a $50,000 inheritance and an obsessive work ethic while still in my mid-20s. I kept my name off the public-facing materials on purpose. My managing partner handled the press. I handled the money. I had more zeros in my personal accounts than Diana Caldwell had ever seen in her company's annual report. I kept the secret because I was tired of being loved for my portfolio. My last relationship had ended when my ex-boyfriend found out how much I was worth and immediately started treating me like an investment vehicle rather than a human being. When I met Marcus at a coffee shop 2 blocks from my real office, he thought I was a mid-level financial analyst. He fell in love with me before he knew the truth. I wanted to keep it that way a little longer. I wanted to make sure the love was real before I opened the vault. But standing in the Texas Grand Ballroom of the Rosewood Mansion on Tuesday evening, surrounded by Houston's black elite, I realized that my silence had been a gift I had given to the wrong people. The gala was the Caldwell Family Foundation's annual fundraiser. Diana hosted it every year with the precision of a military operation. The ballroom was stunning, all ivory and gold, with centerpieces taller than I was and a string quartet playing in the corner. The cause was literacy for underprivileged children, which I had always found bitterly ironic given that Diana treated anyone without a trust fund like they were barely literate themselves. I had arrived with Marcus, wearing a simple burgundy dress I had purchased from a small boutique in Midtown. It was elegant, it was tasteful, it was apparently not enough. Diana had approached me within 10 minutes of our arrival, her eyes doing that slow, vertical scan that rich women use as a weapon. She looked at my dress, then at my shoes, then back at my face with a tight smile that held no warmth. "Serena," she said, kissing the air near my cheek. "You look comfortable." Marcus squeezed my hand. I smiled. I found my seat at table 7. Not at the family table, which was table 1, adorned with fresh orchids and reserved for Diana's bloodline and chosen inner circle. Table 7 was tucked near the back of the room, adjacent to the corridor that led to the hotel kitchen. My father, who had driven 3 hours from Pasadena to attend this gala in the best suit he owned, was seated at table 7 with me. Diana had placed us there together, a deliberate grouping that was not subtle to anyone paying attention. My father did not complain. He never did. He sat with his hands folded on the white linen tablecloth, watching the room with the quiet dignity of a man who had spent 30 years maintaining every public building in his county and had never once asked for recognition. He had scrubbed floors and fixed broken pipes and painted hallways so that I could go to a school with working heaters and clean bathrooms. He was the most honorable man I had ever known. And Diana Caldwell had put him by the kitchen door. I looked at Marcus from across the room. He was at the family table, deep in conversation with his brother. I had tried to raise the seating issue 2 days earlier when Diana sent the final chart. Marcus had shrugged and said his mother had a system and it was not worth making a scene over. He said my father would be fine. He said I was being sensitive. I had swallowed it. Tonight, I told myself, I would address it after tonight. Then came the program. Diana stood at the podium after dinner, radiant in a navy gown that probably cost more than my father's monthly salary. She gave a polished speech about the importance of giving back, about the Caldwell family legacy, about the transformative power of education for children who had nothing. The room applauded. I applauded. My father applauded with genuine warmth because he actually believed in the cause. Then Diana invited the major donors to stand and be recognized. She went through the list with practiced grace, calling names from the front of the room toward the back. Senators, surgeons, CEOs, real estate developers, each one stood, smiled, and received a ripple of applause. It was perfectly choreographed. And then Diana paused, looked up from her notes, and her gaze traveled all the way to table 7 with the deliberate slowness of someone who had rehearsed this moment. And of course, Diana said, her voice carrying clearly through the room, we want to acknowledge the guests who have come from our more modest communities to support this work. It is so important that people from all walks of life feel welcome at our table, even if their table is not quite the same as ours. She smiled at my father. I believe that is you, sir? The maintenance gentleman from Pasadena? 200 heads turned to look at table 7. A spotlight, one I had not seen positioned near the ceiling before, swung across the room and landed on my father. He squinted against the sudden brightness, setting down his fork. We appreciate your contribution, Diana continued, her voice layered with condescension, so practiced it almost sounded like kindness. Every dollar counts, no matter how small. And it is brave of you, really, to come to a room like this. I imagine it is quite an adjustment. Soft, knowing laughter moved through the room. Not everyone laughed, but enough people did. My father set his napkin on the table. He looked at his hands. He did not look up. I looked at Marcus. He was at the family table, and I watched him press his lips together in a way that could have been discomfort or amusement. He caught my eye, and he gave me the smallest shake of his head. Not now, Serena. Not tonight. Not here. I had given people chances before. I had given Diana chances. I had given Marcus chances. I had swallowed discomfort and called it patience and told myself it was worth it because the love was real. My father looked up from his hands, and our eyes met across the room. He gave me a small, tired smile. The same smile he had given me every time someone underestimated him. Every time a parent at my school events had asked him which company he cleaned for. Every time the world had reminded him of his place. It was a smile that said, "It is fine, baby girl. I am used to it." He should not have to be used to it. I pushed back my chair. The sound of it scraping against the marble floor was not loud, but in that particular moment of residual laughter, it was distinct enough to turn heads. I stood up, smoothed the front of my burgundy dress, and walked toward the stage. Not quickly, not with the frantic energy of someone reacting to a wound. Slowly, with the measured pace of someone who had made a decision and was comfortable with every consequence. Diana watched me approach with a puzzled expression that was just beginning to tip into alarm. "Serena," she said, her voice carrying a warning wrapped in a question. "What are you doing, sweetheart?" I stepped up onto the low platform. I held out my hand for the microphone. Diana did not give it to me. I reached across and took it anyway. The feedback from the transition made a brief, sharp sound, and the room went very still. I looked out at 200 faces. I saw curiosity and confusion, and, in the faces of people who had been quietly uncomfortable with Diana's comment, something that looked like relief that someone had walked up here. "Good evening," I said. My voice was steady. "My name is Serena, and I have been quiet for about 3 years too long." Marcus stood up from the family table. "Serena, I will be brief," I said. I did not look at him. "Diana, I want to thank you for making the seating arrangement tonight so clear. Table 7 is a lovely spot. You can really hear the kitchen from there. Very informative." A few people laughed. It was uncertain laughter. They were not sure where this was going. "I also want to thank you for introducing my father as the maintenance gentleman from Pasadena. He has maintained public school buildings for 31 years. He has made sure that the children in our community have clean classrooms and functioning heat in January and safe hallways to walk through. He built the foundation that allowed me to build everything I have built. And he is the only person in this room tonight that I know for certain is here because he genuinely cares about what this foundation is supposed to stand for. I paused. I am going to step outside now with my father, and I want you to know that this engagement is over. Not because I am angry, though I am, but because a man who watches his mother humiliate his future wife's father and gives me a headshake instead of standing up is not a partner. He is an audience member, and I deserve more than an audience. I set the microphone down on the podium. I did not drop it. That would have been too dramatic. I simply set it down, walked down the 2 steps from the stage, crossed the ballroom floor, and went to table 7, where my father was already standing, his jacket buttoned, his expression somewhere between devastated and quietly proud. "Let's go, Dad," I said. He took my arm and we walked out. I heard Diana's voice behind us, sharp and mortified, trying to reclaim the room's attention. I heard Marcus call my name twice. I heard the murmuring of 200 guests deciding what had just happened. None of it mattered. We pushed through the heavy doors into the cool Houston night, and I exhaled for what felt like the first time all evening. My father stopped on the valet landing. He looked at me for a long moment. "Baby," he said quietly, "you didn't have to do that." "I know," I said. "I wanted to." He pulled me into a hug that smelled like the cedar soap he had been using since I was 5 years old. I let him hold on for a moment, and then I said into his shoulder, very softly, "Dad, I need to tell you some things about what I actually do for work." We drove back to the hotel where I had booked us rooms. I ordered room service and we sat at the small table by the window while I explained everything. Stellar Path Capital, the portfolio, the number with more zeros than he had probably ever seen in one place. I watched his face go through confusion, then disbelief, then something quiet and enormous that I could not quite name. He looked at me for a long time after I finished. "You built all that yourself," he said. "You built me first," I said. He cried then, just briefly, and so did I. And then we ate our food, and I told him what I was going to do next. After he went to bed, I went to my room, sat down at the desk, and opened my laptop. I had known the Caldwell family name for 3 years, but I had never looked them up professionally, not the way I looked up acquisition targets. I had deliberately kept that wall in place because I did not want Marcus to feel like a transaction. That wall was gone now. I typed in Caldwell Development Group, the real estate and hospitality company that Diana's late husband had founded and that she now ran with Marcus's older brother overseeing operations. The screen filled with data. It took me about 12 minutes to understand the full picture. Caldwell Development was over-leveraged to a degree that would have made any competent analyst flinch. They had taken on significant construction debt to build a boutique hotel complex in the Heights neighborhood of Houston at exactly the wrong time. The project was 18 months delayed and 15% over budget. Their commercial lenders had already sold a major portion of the debt to reduce their own exposure. I sat back. I pulled up the Stellar Path internal database and searched the secondary market acquisitions from the past 2 quarters. My managing partner ran those independently for the most part, flagging anything above a certain threshold for my signature. There had been 3 Gulf Coast real estate debt packages in that window. I had signed off on all 3 without reviewing the underlying borrowers in detail because I had trusted the diligence process. I opened the 3rd package, Caldwell Development Group. I owned $3.5 million of their primary construction debt. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and called my managing partner. "I need the full file on the Caldwell package," I said when he answered. "Tonight. And I need you in the office at 8 tomorrow morning." "Everything okay?" he asked. "It will be," I said. "Pull the balloon payment schedule." He called me back 20 minutes later. "The balloon is due in 60 days, he said. "They've missed 2 interest payments already. We have full acceleration rights under the default clause. You could call it in tomorrow morning if you wanted to." I looked out the window at the Houston skyline. "What about the collateral?" "The hotel complex under construction." But also he paused, and I could hear him scrolling. "They pledged a second property as additional security. The Caldwell family estate in River Oaks." I closed my eyes. "Get the default notice ready," I said. "I'll review it in the morning." I did not sleep very much that night. Not because I was uncertain, I was completely certain. I did not sleep because I was running the complete picture through my mind with the methodical focus that had made me good at what I do, making sure I had not missed anything, making sure every step was clean and documented and defensible. By 5 a.m., I was dressed. By 6:30, I was at the office. My phone had 37 missed messages from Marcus. I had not opened a single one. My managing partner arrived at 8 with the full file. We went through it together at the conference table, and by 9 o'clock I had signed the acceleration notice on the construction debt. Then Marcus walked into my lobby. He looked like he had not slept either. His shirt was wrinkled and his face was carrying the specific expression of a man who had rehearsed an argument the whole drive over and was now slightly thrown by the building he was standing in. The reception desk was not what he had expected. He had driven to the address he found associated with my name online, which was the modest consulting office I listed publicly for appearances. This was not that building. This was the real office, on the 14th floor of a glass tower in the Galleria district, with Stellar Path Capital etched in brushed steel letters above the reception desk and a staff of 12 going about their morning behind the glass wall. The receptionist had called me. I had told her to send him up. He stepped off the elevator and stopped when he saw me standing in the hallway. I was wearing a charcoal blazer and my reading glasses were still on. I had a coffee in my hand. I had not changed into anything special for him. I was just at work. "Serena," he said. His voice was careful. "What is this place?" "My office," I said. "Your office." He looked at the etched letters, then back at me. "Stellar Path Capital. I've heard of this firm. Most people in commercial real estate have." He was quiet for a moment. I watched him processing. "You told me you were a financial analyst. I told you I worked in finance. You assumed the rest. I didn't correct you because I wanted to know if you liked me for me. I had my answer last night when you shook your head instead of standing up for my father." He flinched. "I was going to say something," he said. "When?" I asked. "After the gala? After the wedding? After the first time your mother said something like that at a family Christmas in front of our children?" I kept my voice level. "Marcus, you had 3 years to show me who you were when it cost you something. Last night cost you something, and you shook your head." He stepped forward. "Serena, please. I love you. My mother went too far. I know that, but she is not easy to confront. You know how she is. I was going to talk to her this morning. I swear." "She's going to have bigger concerns this morning," I said. His eyes narrowed slightly. "What does that mean?" I looked at him for a moment. I thought about the first date, the coffee shop, the way he had laughed at something I said before he even knew my last name. I thought about the version of us that had existed before his family became a wall between us. "It means I think you should go home," I said quietly. "And I think you should be there when your mother finds out what's happening with the company. Because she's going to need someone." He stared at me. "The construction debt," I said simply. "Your family pledged the River Oaks house as additional collateral. You have 60 days on paper, but I issued the acceleration notice this morning. The default is formal as of today." The color left his face. "You!" He stopped. He looked at the Stellar Path name on the wall again, and this time I watched the full weight of it settle on him. "You own our debt." "My firm does." "Since when?" 4 months ago. I didn't know when we bought it. I signed off on a package without reviewing the underlying borrower. "I found out last night." He was silent for a long time. "So this is revenge," he finally said. His voice had gone cold in a way I had not heard from him before. "No," I said. "If I wanted revenge, I would have waited 60 days and taken the hotel and the house without a word. What I am doing is giving you information your family needs so they can make decisions. The notice went to your mother's registered agent this morning. She knows. What happens next is up to her." He looked at me the way people look at someone they thought they knew when they realized they did not. I understood the feeling. "I hope you find someone who stands up for you," I said. "I genuinely mean that." He left. What Diana Caldwell did next surprised even me. "She called me at 10:15, I answered. Her voice was composed in a way that suggested enormous effort. "I would like to meet," she said. "In person. Just the two of us." I told her I had availability at noon. She arrived at my office 12 minutes early, which told me something about her state of mind. She was wearing a cream blazer and she had reapplied her lipstick, but her eyes were doing the thing eyes do when someone has been crying and has worked hard to conceal it. She walked into my conference room and looked at the view of the city for a moment before she sat down. "You could have told me," she said finally, "who you were, what you had." "You never asked," I said. "You decided what I was when I walked in the door." She was quiet. "The house has been in the Caldwell family for 40 years, she said. "My husband's parents lived there. My children grew up there." "I know," I said. "Is there anything—" She stopped. She pressed her lips together. I could see how much this was costing her, the asking. Diana Caldwell did not ask. Diana Caldwell orchestrated. "Is there anything you would consider?" I looked at her across the table. "I'm not going to take your house, Diana," I said. She blinked. "I'm going to restructure the debt on commercial terms, extend the maturity by 18 months, and bring in a project manager to get the hotel construction back on schedule. If the project performs, your family's equity position is protected. If it doesn't, we'll deal with it then. But the house is not part of any action I intend to take." She looked at me with an expression I had not seen on her face before. It was not gratitude exactly. It was something more complicated than that. "Why?" she asked. "Because my father raised me to solve problems, not to punish people." I looked at her steadily. "But I want to be clear about something. I am not doing this for you. I am doing this because the hotel project employs 48 construction workers who had nothing to do with what happened last night. And I am doing this because Marcus loves that house even if he has not had the backbone to tell you that you were wrong." Diana looked down at the table. For a long moment, she said nothing. "I was wrong," she said quietly. It came out like something that had been stored under pressure for a long time. "What I said about your father, it was wrong. It was cruel and it was wrong, and I said it because I was afraid of you and I did not know how to say that." I studied her face. I was not warm, but I was listening. "I have spent 30 years being the most important woman in every room I walked into," she continued. "And from the first moment Marcus brought you home, there was something about you that made me feel like the room was tilting. I did not understand it. I just knew I did not like it. So I tried to make you small." "You tried to make my father small," I said. "Yes." Her voice dropped. "And I am sorry for that. I am genuinely sorry." I sat with that for a moment. "I'll have my partner reach out to your CFO about the restructuring terms," I said. "It's going to require some operational changes on the Caldwell side. I'd recommend being honest with Marcus's brother about the full picture. He's been managing the project without the complete financial information, and that's not fair to him." She nodded. She stood to leave, and then she paused at the door. "Your father," she said, without turning around. "He must be extraordinary, to raise someone like you." "He is," I said. "He always was. You just weren't paying attention." She left. 6 months later, I was standing in the lobby of the newly opened Caldwell Heights Hotel. The construction had come in on the revised schedule, 12 weeks ahead of the extended timeline my project manager had negotiated. The grand opening had been covered by 3 local media outlets and 1 national hospitality trade publication. The building was beautiful, all warm wood and exposed brick, and it employed 60 people, most of them from the surrounding neighborhood. I was there because Stellar Path held an equity stake in the project as part of the restructuring terms, not because the Caldwell family had invited me, though Diana had, in fact, sent a handwritten note. I had brought my father. He stood next to me in the lobby in a new suit I had bought him for the occasion, looking at the building with the appreciative eyes of a man who understood what it takes to keep something standing. "You did good, baby," he said. "We did good," I said. My phone buzzed. It was a message from a number I had not deleted but had not reached out to in 6 months. Marcus. He had seen the coverage of the opening. The message was brief. "I am proud of you. I know that doesn't mean much, but I am." I put my phone back in my pocket. A woman from the event staff approached us and offered my father a glass of champagne. He took it with a thank you that was warm and genuine and entirely himself, and she smiled back at him, the way people smile when they encounter someone whose decency is immediately obvious. I watched him settle into a conversation with a young architect who had worked on the building, and I thought about the chair by the kitchen door at the Texas Grand Ballroom and the spotlight and the soft, knowing laughter that had filled a gilded room. I thought about the woman who had caused all of that and the woman who had turned all of that into something else. Later that evening, when the event wound down and the catering staff began clearing glasses, my father found me by the window. "Can I say something?" he asked. "Always," I said. He looked out at the city and then at me. "I spent 30 years maintaining other people's buildings. I never once thought about owning one. You know what I think about now?" "What?" "I think that the building doesn't care who built it. It doesn't care who cleaned it. It just stands there, doing what it was made to do, holding people up." He paused. "That's what you do, Serena. You hold things up. You always have." I put my head on his shoulder the way I had when I was 5 years old and the world felt too large and too loud. "I learned from you," I said. We stood there while the city went on outside the glass, bright and indifferent and full of stories that had not yet finished being told. The people who had tried to assign us a table by the door were no longer deciding where we sat. We were deciding, and where we sat was exactly where we chose to be. In a room we had helped build, doing work that mattered, with no apology to anyone for the size of what we had quietly become. There is a kind of power that announces itself in spotlights and sharp words and the deliberate cruelty of a microphone, and there is another kind that simply waits, and works, and one day sits down at the head of the table and does not need to explain itself to anyone. My father taught me the second kind. I would not trade it for anything in the world.